I wiped down the mahogany bar top for the third time that evening, my hands moving in practice circles while my eyes never left the private booth in the corner. The amber lights cast warm shadows across the exposed brick walls of the Meridian, and the low hum of jazz from the speakers mixed with the sound of clinking glasses and muted conversation. Saturday nights were always busy, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the man I was supposed to marry in 3 weeks sat in my establishment, surrounded by his friends, about to teach me the most valuable lesson of my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Another round of the Macallan 25, beautiful, called out Derek's voice, dripping with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. My fiancé, the man who thought I was a struggling bartender working my way through community college. The man who had no idea that the beautiful he was casually ordering around owned every bottle behind this bar, every brick in these walls, and the 3 other establishments just like it scattered across the city. I caught my reflection in the mirror behind the top-shelf bottles. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup, the standard black shirt and jeans uniform of the Meridian staff. I looked exactly like what I was pretending to be. A 28-year-old woman grateful for tips and a regular paycheck. The diamond engagement ring on my left hand caught the light as I reached for the bottle of scotch. It was beautiful. Derek had made sure everyone knew it cost him 3 months' salary. What he didn't know was that 3 months of his salary wouldn't cover the insurance on the vintage wine collection in my personal cellar downstairs. "Coming right up," I replied with the practiced smile I'd perfected over the past year. Sweet, accommodating, maybe a little tired, the smile of someone who needed this job. I poured 5 glasses of the scotch with steady hands, each measure perfect. 15 years in the hospitality industry had taught me precision, though Derek believed my bartending experience started 6 months ago when I'd finally found steady work. The irony was exquisite. I'd been pouring drinks since I was 21, working my way up from a dive bar in Brooklyn to eventually owning my first establishment at 25. That first place had been small, a neighborhood spot that barely broke even the first year. But I'd learned, adapted, and built it into something profitable before selling it and using the capital to open the Meridian 3 years ago. As I arranged the glasses on a tray, Marcus, my actual bar manager and one of the few people who knew my real identity, caught my eye from the other end of the bar. He raised an eyebrow, a silent question. I gave him a slight nod. Everything was under control. He went back to mixing cocktails for a group of tourists, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Marcus had been with me since the beginning. He'd watched me build this place from an empty warehouse with water-damaged floors and broken windows. He'd also watched me fall for Derek 8 months ago, watched me make the decision to hide my success, and he'd bitten his tongue through all of it. I couldn't blame him for his concern. What woman in her right mind pretended to be broke when she was actually a millionaire? But Marcus didn't know what I knew. He hadn't watched his mother get used and discarded by 3 different men who were only interested in her money. He hadn't seen the way his older sister's marriage crumbled the moment her startup went public, and suddenly she was worth more than her husband. My family's wealth had always been complicated. My grandmother had built a small fortune in real estate, and my mother had multiplied it through savvy investments. But money, I'd learned early, attracted the wrong kind of attention. By the time I was 25 and buying my first bar, I'd already had 2 relationships end badly. Men who were more interested in my portfolio than my personality. So when I met Derek at a friend's rooftop party, when he'd approached me with that charming smile and asked what I did for a living, I'd made a split-second decision. "I'm between things right now," I'd said, which was technically true. I'd been between selling my first bar and opening the Meridian, picking up bartending shifts here and there. His eyes had lit up with something I'd mistaken for kindness at the time. "That's tough," he'd said, "but admirable. Honest work. Honest work." As if there was something more honest about pouring drinks for tips than building a business empire. But I'd smiled and accepted his offer to buy me a drink, and somewhere in that conversation, I'd decided to see where this would go. What would it be like, I'd wondered, to be loved for myself rather than my bank account? Now, carrying the tray of expensive scotch toward Derek's booth, I was about to find out exactly what he thought of the myself he'd gotten to know. "There she is," Derek announced as I approached, his voice already carrying that loose edge that came after the fourth drink. "My beautiful, hard-working fiancé." The 5 men at the table looked up at me with varying expressions. There was Derek, of course, in his crisp button-down and designer jeans, his dirty blonde hair styled with that careful carelessness that took him 20 minutes every morning. To his left sat Marcus. Not my Marcus, but Marcus Chen, Derek's college roommate and current coworker at the investment firm. Then there was James, the best man for our upcoming wedding, with his wire-rimmed glasses and perpetual smirk. Across from them sat Tyler and Brandon, both from Derek's gym, both built like they spent more time looking at themselves in mirrors than at anything else. "Here you go. Gentlemen," I said, distributing the glasses with practiced efficiency. "Macallan 25 as requested." "See, this is what I'm talking about," Derek said, gesturing at me with his glass. "Work ethic. My girl's got work ethic." "How much does a place like this pay anyway?" Tyler asked, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made my skin crawl. "With tips and everything?" I'd had plenty of practice answering this question over the past months. "Depends on the night," I said with a modest shrug. "Maybe 40, 50,000 a year if it's good." "Jesus," Brandon whistled. "That's rough, man. Good thing she's got you." Derek's smile widened and he reached out to squeeze my hand. The touch felt different tonight, possessive in a way it hadn't before. Or maybe I was finally seeing what had always been there. "That's why we're waiting to have kids," Derek said, and I felt my spine stiffen. This was new. We'd never discussed having kids, let alone the timing. "Need to get her finances in order first. Can't have my wife struggling, you know." "Very generous of you," James said, raising his glass. "Taking on that kind of project." Project. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. "I should get back to the bar," I said, keeping my voice light. "Let me know if you need anything else." As I turned away, I heard Derek's voice drop to what he probably thought was a whisper but carried clearly in the acoustics of the room. "That's the thing about dating down," he said. "You get gratitude. These high-maintenance women with their own money, they're always keeping score. But someone like Emma, she knows she hit the jackpot." The laughter that followed his words felt like ice water down my spine. I kept walking, my posture perfect, my pace unchanged. Behind the bar, Marcus met my eyes again, and this time his expression was pure fury. I gave a tiny shake of my head. Not yet. The next hour passed in a blur of drink orders and forced smiles. I served other tables, mixed cocktails, made small talk with regulars who had no idea that the woman pouring their beer owned the building they sat in. The Meridian had been designed to feel like an upscale speakeasy, all dark wood and leather, vintage fixtures, and carefully curated art on the walls. Every detail had been my choice, from the specific shade of paint to the playlist rotation. This place was my fourth child. After the 3 other bars I owned across the city, each operated under the umbrella of my carefully structured LLC. But tonight, I wasn't the owner. Tonight, I was Emma the bartender, Emma the fiancé, Emma who had hit the jackpot by landing a man with a 6-figure salary and a luxury apartment in Chelsea. "Emma!" Derek's voice rang out again. "Sweetheart, can you bring us some of those truffle fries?" I nodded and put in the order with the kitchen, then pulled out my phone while I waited. A text from my attorney, Rebecca, lit up the screen. "Documents ready for review. Coffee Monday?" I typed back quickly, "Make it breakfast, 8 a.m., the usual place." Rebecca Chen, no relation to Derek's friend Marcus, had been my lawyer since I opened my first bar. She'd helped me structure my businesses in ways that kept my name largely out of public records, using a web of LLCs and holding companies that made it nearly impossible to trace back to me without serious legal digging. It had seemed like paranoia at the time, but now I was grateful for every layer of protection. The kitchen bell rang, and I picked up the truffle fries, arranging them on a plate with the artistic touch that had become second nature. As I carried them to Derek's table, I noticed the conversation had shifted. "I'm just saying," Tyler was saying, "marriage is a business transaction. You provide security, she provides other things. It's economics." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Exactly," Derek agreed. "That's why prenups exist. I mean, not that I need one. What's Emma going to bring to the table? Student loans and a beat-up Honda?" My Honda Civic. I'd bought it specifically for this charade. A 2015 model with a dent in the passenger door that I'd never bothered to fix. My actual car, a pristine Tesla Model S, sat in the private garage beneath my penthouse apartment in Tribeca, the apartment Derek had never seen, the apartment I'd told him I couldn't afford. "Here are your fries," I said, setting down the plate. My voice was steady, betraying nothing. "Thanks, babe," Derek said, barely glancing at me. "Hey, you know what? Bring us a bottle of champagne. The good stuff. We're celebrating." "What are we celebrating?" I asked, and I genuinely wanted to know. "My promotion came through," Derek said, his chest puffing with pride. "Senior associate at the firm. $50,000 raise, plus bonuses." "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. Derek was good at his job. I'd never questioned that. He worked hard, put in long hours, played the corporate game with skill. It was one of the things I'd initially found attractive about him. Ambition, drive. I understood those qualities because I possessed them myself. "So the good champagne," James interjected. "None of that cheap stuff she usually drinks." My fingers tightened imperceptibly on my serving tray. The cheap stuff I kept in my purse was a vintage Krug that cost more than James probably made in a week. But Derek had seen me buy it at a discount liquor store, where I'd actually been picking up a personal order from the owner, an old friend who saved special bottles for my collection. "I'll see what we have," I said. Back at the bar, Marcus was already pulling a bottle from the locked cabinet, Dom Perignon 2008. It retailed for about $300, which meant Derek's tab for the evening was approaching $1,000. Not that he'd asked about prices. He never did. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly as I approached. "Fine," I said, taking the bottle. "Just gathering information." "Information?" His eyes narrowed. "Emma, what are you planning?" I looked at him fully then, this man who'd stood by me through building this business, through the long nights and the difficult decisions. Marcus was 43, with silver threading through his black hair and the kind of quiet competence that made him perfect for management. He'd been a bartender at my first establishment, and when I'd told him I was planning something bigger, he'd taken a leap of faith and come with me. "You'll see," I said. "Just trust me." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Always have." I returned to Derek's table with the champagne and 5 flutes. As I popped the cork with practiced ease, another skill Derek thought I'd recently acquired rather than one I'd been perfecting for over a decade, Derek reached out and pulled me close, his arm around my waist. "This is going to change everything, Em," he said, his breath warm against my ear, heavy with scotch. "With my raise, we can finally get you out of this place. Maybe you can go back to school, get a real degree, make something of yourself. Make something of myself." The words echoed in my head as I stood there, trapped in his embrace, watching his friends nod in approval at his magnanimity. I'd made something of myself. I'd built an empire from nothing, navigated the brutal world of New York hospitality, survived and thrived in an industry with a 90% failure rate. I employed 63 people across my 4 establishments. I paid fair wages, provided health insurance, created opportunities for people like Marcus to grow and prosper. But Derek didn't know any of that. To him, I was a project, a fixer-upper, someone who needed rescue. "That's so thoughtful," I managed to say, extricating myself gently. "I should really get back to work, though. Enjoy the champagne." As I walked away, I heard Tyler's voice. "Dude, you're like a saint. I don't know if I could handle that." "Handle what?" Derek asked. "The whole broke girl thing. I mean, she's hot and all, but still. That's a lot of financial burden to take on. You know what, though?" Derek's voice had that philosophical tone he got when he was drunk and feeling profound. "It's actually perfect. Think about it. She'll never leave me. She's got no options, no money, no real career prospects, no backup plan. I'm it for her. There's security in that." The champagne flute in my hand nearly slipped. I caught it just in time, set it carefully on a table, and continued walking. My heart was pounding, but my face remained serene. Years of negotiations with suppliers, dealing with difficult customers, and managing the complex dynamics of running a business had taught me to control my reactions. Behind the bar, I pulled out my phone again. This time, I opened the security camera app that connected to the hidden cameras throughout the Meridian. Every bar owner in New York had them. Insurance against liability, documentation for disputes, protection for staff and customers. What most people didn't realize was how good the audio quality had become on modern systems. I pulled up the feed from Derek's table. The angle was perfect, capturing all 5 men clearly. And the audio, running through the enhancement software I'd had installed last month, was crystal clear. Another text to Rebecca. "Need to move up that breakfast. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., urgent." Her response came immediately. "I'll be there." The evening wore on. I served drinks, cleared tables, made small talk. And all the while, Derek's booth got louder, their voices carrying across the bar as inhibitions dissolved in expensive scotch and champagne. "You should have seen her at the company holiday party," James was saying. "She was so out of place, wearing some dress from Target while everyone else was in designer everything." The dress had actually been vintage Chanel that I'd bought at an estate sale, but I'd carefully removed the label and told Derek I'd found it at a discount store. The memory of his patronizing smile when he'd said, "You did great with what you had to work with," still stung. "At least she's pretty," Brandon offered. "Could be worse." "She's pretty now," Tyler countered. "But wait until the money stress starts showing. Poor people age faster, you know? It's a scientific fact. I wondered what Tyler would say if he knew that the poor person he was discussing had a standing appointment with one of Manhattan's top dermatologists, a personal trainer who charged $200 an hour, and a healthcare plan that covered everything from acupuncture to mental health services. The wedding's going to be rough, though, Marcus Chen, Derek's friend, added. I mean, her family's got no money either, right? So it's all on you? Derek waved a hand dismissively. Her dad's some kind of handyman, and her mom works retail. They offered to contribute $5,000, which is sweet but basically nothing. The venue alone is going to cost $40,000, but that's fine. I want Emma to have a nice wedding, something she'll remember. He was right about the venue cost. What he didn't know was that the venue he'd chosen, the waterfront space with the spectacular Manhattan skyline views, was owned by Meridian Properties LLC, one of my holding companies. I'd given him a discount through a connection, which really meant I was essentially paying for my own wedding venue. The irony was so thick I could taste it. It was approaching midnight when things really fell apart. Derek, now well past the point of reasonable judgment, stood up and clinked his glass with a fork, calling for attention from the entire bar. "Excuse me, everyone," he announced, swaying slightly. "I'd like to make a toast." The bar quieted, all eyes turning to the private booth. I felt my stomach drop. "I want to toast to my beautiful fiancée, Emma," Derek continued, gesturing broadly in my direction. "She works here, behind this bar, slinging drinks to make ends meet. And you know what? I admire that. I really do. She's nothing without my money, let's be honest, but she's trying. She's really trying. And in 3 weeks, I'm going to make an honest woman out of her. I'm going to give her the life she deserves." The bar was silent. Every regular customer, every staff member, everyone who actually knew who I was, they all stared at Derek with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Marcus looked like he might vault over the bar and tackle my fiancé. Elena, my head server who'd been with me for 2 years, had her hand over her mouth. But Derek, drunk and oblivious, just kept going. "So here's to Emma." He raised his glass higher. "To the lucky girl who landed a guy like me. To marrying up. To second chances and fresh starts. To my future wife." His friends cheered and drank. The rest of the bar remained frozen. And I, standing behind the mahogany bar that I'd personally selected from a salvage yard in Connecticut, that I'd had refinished by the best craftsman in the state, that bore a small carved inscription on the underside that read EC 2020, my initials and the year I'd opened. I smiled. "That's very sweet, Derek," I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the space. "Thank you." Then I turned to Marcus, my Marcus, and said quietly, "I think it's time." He nodded, understanding immediately, and pulled out his phone. 10 minutes later, Victoria Chen walked through the front door of the Meridian. Victoria was Marcus's sister, a journalist who'd made her name exposing corruption in New York's restaurant industry. She was also one of my closest friends and had been in on my secret from the beginning. Tonight, she wasn't here as a friend. She was here as documentation. "Emma!" she called out, waving enthusiastically. "I thought I'd find you here. Girl, we need to celebrate." I met her halfway across the floor, letting her embrace me with the easy familiarity of old friends. Derek and his group watched with mild interest. "Celebrate what?" I asked, playing along. "What? You didn't see. The Business Journal published their annual list of New York's top entrepreneurs under 35. You made number 4. The bar went so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the glasses. "I think you might have me confused with someone else," I said carefully. but Victoria was already pulling up something on her phone. "No way. It's definitely you. Look, Emma Catherine Sullivan, 28, owner of the Meridian Group, which operates 4 of New York's hottest bars and lounges. Estimated annual revenue, $6.2 million. Known for her innovative approach to upscale casual dining and her commitment to employee welfare, Sullivan has built an empire while maintaining remarkable anonymity." Victoria paused, looking around the bar with theatrical surprise. "Wait, we're at the Meridian right now. This is your place?" Every eye in the establishment turned to me. Derek had gone pale, his mouth hanging slightly open. His friends looked confused, except for James, who was rapidly putting pieces together, his expression shifting from confusion to something like horror. "Victoria," I said quietly, "this isn't the time." "Oh my God, I'm sorry," she said, but her eyes were sparkling with mischief. "I just thought everyone knew. I mean, you're pretty famous in restaurant circles. There was that whole feature in Eater about how you revolutionized the craft cocktail scene in Tribeca, and the Times piece about your employee profit-sharing program. Victoria, please." She squeezed my hand apologetically, but the damage, or rather, the revelation, was complete. Around the bar, regular customers who'd known my secret were nodding, some smiling. My staff stood a little straighter, a little prouder, and Derek looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. "Emma?" His voice was small, uncertain. "What is she talking about?" I looked at him, this man I'd planned to marry. This man who'd just announced to a room full of people that I was nothing without his money, and I made a decision. "I think we should talk," I said. "Privately, upstairs." The Meridian's second floor wasn't open to the public. It housed my private office, a storage area, and a small apartment I kept for nights when I worked too late to drive home. Derek had never been up there. He'd never even known it existed. "Lead the way," he said, his voice tight. As we moved toward the back staircase, I caught Marcus's eye one more time. He nodded. He'd handle things down here. Victoria winked at me, already settling into a seat at the bar where she could casually interview some of the other patrons about their experiences at the Meridian. Derek followed me up the stairs in silence. I could feel the questions burning behind his eyes, the confusion, maybe the first stirrings of anger. Good. We were about to have the most honest conversation of our entire relationship. My office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd built a successful business. Organized, professional, with enough personal touches to make it comfortable. There was the framed photo of me and my mother at my first bar opening. The shelf of industry awards that I'd been collecting over the years. My degrees on the wall, a bachelor's in business administration from NYU, and a master's in hospitality management from Cornell. Derek stared at everything as if seeing it for the first time. Because he was. "Close the door," I said, moving behind my desk. He did, then stood there, uncertainty written across his features. This was a Derek I'd never seen before. Unsure, off balance, stripped of his usual confidence. "I don't understand," he finally said. "This is... That woman downstairs said you own this place?" "I own this place," I confirmed, settling into my chair. "And 3 others. The Meridian is my flagship, but I also own Novella in Soho, Cornerstone in the West Village, and Heights in Brooklyn." "But you're a bartender." "I'm the owner who sometimes works her own bar," I corrected. "There's a difference." He shook his head, like he could physically dislodge the information that didn't fit his worldview. "This doesn't make sense. Your apartment is one I rent specifically for when I need to maintain a cover," I said. My actual home is a penthouse in Tribeca. 3 bedrooms, 2,000 square feet, with a view of the Hudson. Your car is one of 3 vehicles I own. The Honda was convenient for this particular situation. But your job. He was grasping now, trying to make reality match his expectations. You work here 40 hours a week. I've seen you come home exhausted. I work here because I choose to, I said. Because I built this place from nothing, and I like to stay connected to it. And yes, running 4 successful businesses is exhausting, but it's my kind of exhaustion. Derek pulled out one of the chairs facing my desk and collapsed into it. Why? He finally asked. Why would you lie about all of this? It was a fair question. I'd asked myself the same thing many times over the past 8 months. Because I wanted to know, I said simply. I wanted to know if someone could love me for myself. Not for my money, not for what I could provide, but for who I actually am. So this was all what? Some kind of test? In a way, yes. I opened my laptop, pulling up a file I'd been compiling for weeks. And you failed it spectacularly. His face flushed with anger. That's not fair. You lied to me. I omitted information about my financial status, I interrupted. But I never lied about who I am as a person. Every conversation we had, every interest I shared, every opinion I expressed, that was all real. The only thing I hid was my bank account. Only? He laughed bitterly. That's a pretty big only, Emma. Is it? Really? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. Because from where I'm sitting, you just spent the evening telling your friends that I'm nothing without your money, that I'm a project, that you're taking on a financial burden. You literally toasted to me being lucky to have landed you. The color drained from his face. You heard that? Derek, I've been working the bar all night. I heard everything. I turned the laptop around, showing him the security camera feed. And I have it all recorded. Every word. He stared at the screen, watching himself laugh and joke with his friends, watching himself belittle and demean the woman he'd claimed to love. When he finally looked up at me, there was something new in his eyes. Not quite shame, but close. I was drunk, he said weakly. Drunk words are sober thoughts, I replied. Isn't that what they say? Emma, come on. You have to understand. I thought I was supporting you, helping you. Of course I felt good about that. What man wouldn't? A man who saw me as an equal partner instead of a project to fix, I said. A man who valued my character, my intelligence, my work ethic, regardless of what I was earning. A man who didn't need to feel superior to feel secure. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, So what now? You've had your fun, proved your point. Do we just laugh about this and move on? I studied his face, looking for any sign that he understood the gravity of what he'd done, what he'd revealed about himself. But all I saw was a man trying to figure out how to spin this situation to his advantage. Even now, even caught, he was thinking about damage control. No, I said softly. We don't laugh about this and move on. I opened a drawer in my desk and pulled out a small box. Inside was the engagement ring he'd given me 6 months ago. I set it on the desk between us. The wedding is off, Derek. His eyes went wide. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Tonight showed me exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. When you thought I had no power, no options, no way to push back. That's when your real character showed. And I don't like what I saw. Emma, please! He reached across the desk, but I pulled my hands back. I love you. I'm sorry about what I said downstairs. I was showing off for my friends, being an idiot. But that's not how I really feel. Isn't it, though? I asked. Because you've been remarkably consistent over the past 8 months. The little comments about my potential, the advice about going back to school, the way you insisted on paying for everything, even when I tried to contribute. You liked having a girlfriend you could rescue. It made you feel important. That's not fair. You want to talk about fair? I felt my voice rising and forced it back down to a professional level. Let's talk about fair. It's not fair to build a relationship on the assumption that your partner is lesser than you. It's not fair to expect gratitude for basic respect. And it's definitely not fair to announce to a room full of people that your fiancé is nothing without your money. Derek slumped in his chair, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I need you to leave now, I said. Your tab downstairs is $947. Marcus will run your card. You're going to make me pay? He sounded incredulous. Why wouldn't I? You ordered the drinks. You wanted to celebrate. That celebration costs money. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You know what? Fine. This is probably better anyway. Can you imagine the gossip if my colleagues found out my wife was a bartender? There it was. The truth underneath all the pretty words and performative generosity. He wasn't upset about losing me. He was upset about looking foolish. I'm not a bartender, I said evenly. I'm a successful business owner who sometimes works her own bar. There's a difference. But you were never interested in seeing that difference, were you? He didn't answer, just headed for the door. Derek, I called out as he reached for the handle. He paused, but didn't turn around. For what it's worth, I did care about you. The version of you I thought existed. The man who seemed kind and supportive. But that man was an illusion, wasn't he? He only existed when he felt superior. Derek's shoulders stiffened, but he still didn't turn around. You know what your problem is, Emma? You're a manipulator. You played games with my life. No, I said quietly. I protected myself. There's a difference. He left without another word, the door closing with a soft click behind him. I sat in my office chair, surrounded by the physical evidence of everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved, and I felt relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. He's paying his tab. Looks furious. Are you okay? I typed back. Better than okay? Can you send up Victoria? 2 minutes later, Victoria knocked and entered, carrying 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one and settled into the chair Derek had vacated. So, she said, that was dramatic. That was necessary, I corrected, taking a sip. It was a Bordeaux from my personal collection, the one I kept in the climate-controlled wine room next to my office. The bottle probably cost more than Derek's entire bar tab. Are you really okay? Victoria asked, her professional demeanor dropping away to reveal genuine concern. 8 months is a long time to invest in a relationship. 8 months is nothing compared to a lifetime with the wrong person, I replied. I'm sad about what could have been, but I'm grateful I found out who he really was before we signed any paperwork. Victoria nodded, then grinned. The look on his face, though. When I brought up the business journal list, priceless. I thought his brain was going to short circuit. You enjoyed that too much, I said, but I was smiling. Guilty, but seriously, Emma, what made you decide to blow your cover tonight? I thought you were going to wait until after the holidays. I thought about Derek's toast, about the casual cruelty of announcing to a room full of people that I was nothing without his money, about the way his friends had laughed and agreed, about the complete lack of respect in every word. He made a choice, I said finally. He chose to humiliate me publicly, thinking I had no recourse. He felt safe being cruel because he thought I was powerless. That told me everything I needed to know about how he'd treat me once we were married, once he felt even more secure in his position of financial superiority. "Well, he definitely knows better now," Victoria said. "Half the bar is probably posting about this on social media as we speak. Local finance bro discovers his broke fiancé is actually a millionaire business owner." I laughed despite myself. God, please tell me they're not. "Oh, they absolutely are. Welcome to viral fame, Emma. You're about to become a Chow legend." She wasn't wrong. By the time I went back downstairs 30 minutes later, my phone was blowing up with notifications. Friends from the industry, former classmates, business contacts, everyone wanted to know if the rumors were true. Had I really been secretly dating a guy who had no idea who I was? Had he really made that toast? The bar itself was buzzing with energy. Instead of the awkward aftermath I'd feared, there was an almost celebratory atmosphere. Regulars who'd known my secret for months were finally free to talk about it openly. Staff members were fielding questions from curious newcomers who'd heard the commotion and wanted the story. And in the center of it all, Marcus was holding down the fort with his usual efficiency, keeping drinks flowing and maintaining order. When he saw me, he pointed to a corner booth where my mother was sitting, looking elegant and slightly amused. "Mom." I made my way over to her, confused. "What are you doing here?" "Victoria texted me," she said, standing to embrace me. "Told me you might need some family support." My mother, Catherine Sullivan, was 62 and still one of the most formidable women I'd ever met. She'd raised me and my brother as a single mother after my father died when I was 7, building her own real estate business while making sure we never wanted for anything. She'd taught me that financial independence wasn't just about money, it was about freedom, dignity, and the ability to walk away from anything that didn't serve you. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, but I let her hold me anyway. "I know you are," she replied, "but I'm your mother. Let me worry anyway." We sat down, and she ordered a vodka martini, her preferred drink since before I was born. As Marcus brought it over with a knowing smile, my mother fixed me with the look that had terrified me as a teenager and comforted me as an adult. "Tell me about this boy," she said. So I did. I told her everything about meeting Derek, about the decision to hide my success, about the past 8 months of watching him reveal himself in small moments and large gestures. I told her about his friends, about the patterns I'd noticed, about the final toast that had made my decision clear. When I finished, my mother was quiet for a moment, sipping her martini thoughtfully. "You know what the saddest part is?" she finally said. "He could have had something real. A partner who understood business, who shared his drive and ambition. Someone who could have built something with him rather than someone who needed to be taken care of. But he didn't want that. He wanted someone small so he could feel big." "Yeah," I said softly. "That's exactly it." "Well," Mom raised her glass, "his loss. To the Sullivan women, we don't need rescuing." I clinked my glass against hers, and for the first time all evening, I felt completely at peace with my decision. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We closed at 2 a.m., which meant helping Marcus and the rest of the staff with final cleanup, counting out the registers, and securing everything for the night. It was familiar work, comforting in its routine. By 3 a.m., it was just me, Marcus, and Victoria left in the bar, sitting at a corner table and decompressing. "So what's next?" Victoria asked. "Besides calling off the wedding, I mean." I'd been thinking about that question since Derek walked out. I need to contact the venue, the caterer, the photographer, all our vendors, send out cancellation notices to the guests, return gifts that have already arrived. I meant for you, Victoria clarified. What's next for Emma Sullivan, successful business owner and newly single woman? I looked around the Meridian, at the space I'd created, the dream I'd built from nothing. The mahogany bar gleaming under the vintage lights, the exposed brick walls that had taken weeks to properly restore, the carefully curated art collection, the custom furniture, every detail that made this place uniquely mine. I think, I said slowly, I'm going to stop hiding. Derek was right about one thing. I was playing games. Not maliciously, but I was still being dishonest about a fundamental part of who I am, and I'm tired of it. So no more secret identity? Marcus asked. No more secret identity, I confirmed. From now on, I'm just going to be myself. All of me. And anyone who can't handle that. I shrugged. They know where the door is. Victoria smiled. I think that's the best revenge of all. Not some elaborate scheme or public humiliation. Just living your truth and being successful. Oh, I don't know, I said with a grin. Watching Derek's face when you brought up that business journal list was pretty satisfying, too. We all laughed, and it felt good. It felt right. My phone buzzed again, another message, but this time from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, Emma, it's James, Derek's friend. I just wanted to apologize for tonight. We were way out of line. I didn't realize... Anyway, sorry. Hope you're okay. I stared at the message for a moment, then showed it to Victoria and Marcus. Interesting, Victoria mused. Someone's trying to save face. Or covering his own ass in case this goes viral, Marcus added cynically. But I remembered James from dinner parties and group outings over the past months. He'd always been the quieter one of Derek's friends, the one who laughed at jokes but rarely made them himself. Maybe he genuinely felt bad. Or maybe Marcus was right, and he was just worried about how this would look. Either way, I typed back, "Thanks for reaching out. No hard feelings. Take care." Short, polite, final. "You're too nice," Victoria observed. "I'm professional," I corrected. "There's a difference." By 4 a.m., we were all exhausted. Marcus locked up while Victoria and I headed out to the street. The air was crisp and cool, that particular quality New York gets in the early morning hours when the city briefly quiets down. "You need a ride?" Victoria asked, gesturing to where her car was parked. "Nah, I'm just going to walk," I said. "I need to clear my head." She hugged me tight. "Call me tomorrow? Or today, technically, after you've slept." "I will." "And Victoria." I pulled back to look at her. "Thank you for being willing to play along with that dramatic entrance," she laughed. "Are you kidding? That was the most fun I've had in months. Besides, what are friends for if not to help you expose your fiancé's true colors in the most theatrical way possible?" I watched her drive away, then started the 15-minute walk to my actual apartment. The streets were quiet, just the occasional taxi passing by and the distant sound of the subway rumbling beneath the pavement. I thought about everything that had happened, everything that had changed in the space of a few hours. This morning, I'd woken up as Emma the bartender, engaged to Derek, planning a wedding and a future. Now I was just Emma, business owner, independent woman, free of pretense and games. And you know what? It felt amazing. When I finally got home, slipping into my penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and stunning views, I felt like I could breathe fully for the first time in months. I changed into comfortable clothes, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the window watching the sky lighten with approaching dawn. My phone buzzed one more time. "Derek, we need to talk. This isn't over." I stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked his number. He was right. This wasn't over. But the next chapter of the story wouldn't include him. I had a business empire to run after all, and I was done pretending to be anything less than who I was. The first thing I did Monday morning was meet with Rebecca at our usual spot, a quiet cafe in the West Village that most tourists never found. She was already there when I arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, a stack of folders on the table and 2 coffees waiting. "I ordered your usual," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "Figured you'd need the caffeine after the weekend you've had." Word traveled fast in our circles. Rebecca had probably heard 3 different versions of Saturday night's events before Sunday brunch. "It's been interesting," I admitted, taking a grateful sip of the latte. "My phone hasn't stopped buzzing since Victoria made her grand announcement." Rebecca smiled, but it was her professional smile, the one that meant we were about to discuss serious business. "Speaking of which, we need to talk about damage control, or rather, narrative control." She pushed the first folder toward me. Inside were printouts of social media posts, articles from local food blogs, even a screenshot of a Reddit thread titled, "Finance Bro Gets Owned by Secret Millionaire Girlfriend." "You've gone viral," Rebecca said simply. "The story hit the Eater newsletter this morning. New York Magazine wants an interview, and I've had 3 calls from producers asking about television rights." I stared at the papers, feeling surreal. "Television rights? To what? My failed engagement?" "To your story. Think about it, Emma. Successful woman tests her fiancé by hiding her wealth, discovers he's only interested in feeling superior. It's catnip for the modern dating discourse." "No," I said firmly, pushing the folder back. "I'm not turning my personal life into entertainment. This was never about revenge or public humiliation. It was about finding out the truth." "And you did," Rebecca agreed. "But now you need to manage the fallout. Derek's been making calls." That got my attention. "What kind of calls?" "To mutual acquaintances, mostly. Trying to control the narrative. He's claiming you manipulated him, that the whole relationship was some kind of sick social experiment. A few people are listening." I felt a flash of anger but tamped it down. Of course Derek would try to flip the script. He couldn't accept that he'd failed a test he didn't know he was taking. "Let him talk," I said. "Anyone who knows me knows the truth." "That's fine for your personal life," Rebecca said. "But what about your business? You've spent 3 years maintaining a low profile. Now you're the subject of dozens of articles and think pieces. That changes things." She was right. I'd built my businesses on quality and word of mouth, deliberately avoiding the spotlight. Now that spotlight was pointed directly at me, and I needed to decide how to handle it. "What do you recommend?" I asked. Rebecca opened the second folder. "Option 1, ignore it. Don't give any interviews, don't engage with the story. Let it die down naturally. Problem is, silence gets interpreted as guilt or shame. People will fill in the blanks themselves." Option 2, get ahead of it. One strategic interview with someone you trust, Victoria maybe, telling your side. Not vindictive, not defensive, just honest. Explain why you did, what you learned, what happens next. Control your own narrative. I thought about it while drinking my coffee. The idea of discussing my failed engagement publicly made my skin crawl. But Rebecca was right. Silence could be interpreted 1,000 different ways, none of them good. "There's something else," Rebecca said, her tone shifting. "Derek's lawyer sent over a letter this morning. He's threatening to sue for emotional distress and fraud." I nearly choked on my latte. "Fraud? What fraud?" He's claiming you deliberately deceived him about your financial status in order to, quote, manipulate his emotions and waste his time. His lawyer is arguing that you entered the relationship under false pretenses. For a moment, I just stared at her. Then I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of Derek trying to claim victim status was almost impressive. Can he actually do that? I asked when I caught my breath. Can he file? Yes. Will he win? Absolutely not. But he can make noise, rack up legal fees, and generally be a pain in your ass for 6 months to a year. Rebecca's expression was grim. This is revenge, Emma. Pure and simple. So what do? We bury him in paperwork and countersue for defamation if he keeps running his mouth. Rebecca pulled out another document. But there's a cleaner option. I drafted a settlement agreement. You pay him nothing, he signs an NDA promising not to discuss the relationship or your business affairs, and everyone walks away. I looked at the agreement, scanning the legalese. It was fair, even generous considering Derek had no actual case. But something about it bothered me. If he signs this, he gets to save face, I said slowly. He gets to pretend he's taking the high road by not pursuing legal action. He gets to move on without consequences. Yes, Rebecca agreed, but you also get to move on. Clean break, no extended legal battle, no headlines about lawsuits. Sometimes the best revenge is just being done with someone. She had a point. But I thought about Derek's toast, about the casual cruelty in his voice when he'd told a room full of people I was nothing without his money. I thought about his friends laughing, about the months of subtle condescension I'd endured while playing my role. What if we did something different? I said. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. What if we make a donation? A big one. To a women's entrepreneurship fund or a small business grant program. In Derek's name. A slow smile spread across Rebecca's face. Oh, that's good. That's very good. He wanted everyone to think he was this generous guy, right? Supporting his struggling girlfriend? Let's make that real. $50,000 to help women start their own businesses. We announce it publicly, thank Derek for inspiring us to give back. I was warming to the idea now. He can't complain without looking like an asshole, but everyone who knows the real story will understand exactly what we're doing. It's perfect, Rebecca said. Generous, classy, and just passive-aggressive enough to make the point. I love it. Then let's do it. Draft the announcement, set up the donation, and send Derek his NDA. If he signs, we make the donation in his honor. If he doesn't and tries to sue, we bury him in legal motions and donate the money anyway. Rebecca made notes on her legal pad, still smiling. You know, most of my clients want blood when relationships end badly. You're the first one who's weaponized charitable giving. I learned from my mother, I said. She always said the best way to win is to make your enemy look bad by being better than them. We spent the next hour going over details, the NDA terms, the charitable donation structure, talking points for any media inquiries. By the time I left the cafe, I felt like I had a plan. Not for revenge exactly, but for closure with dignity intact. My phone rang as I walked back toward the Meridian. Victoria. Have you seen the email? She asked without preamble. What email? Check your business account, now. I pulled up my email app, scrolling through the usual Monday morning deluge. And there, sitting in my inbox with a subject line that made my heart skip. Partnership opportunity, Azure Group. The Azure Group was one of the biggest hospitality conglomerates in the country. They owned hotel chains, restaurant brands, entertainment venues. I'd been following their expansion for years, studying their business model, learning from their strategies. I opened the email. Ms. Sullivan, We've been following your work with the Meridian Group for some time. Your approach to upscale casual dining and commitment to employee welfare aligns with our corporate values. Recent events have brought your impressive story to our attention in a more personal way. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership that would allow you to expand your brand nationally while maintaining operational control. Would you be available for a meeting this week? Best regards, Jennifer Chen, VP of Strategic Partnerships, Azure Group. I read it twice, then a third time, barely believing what I was seeing. Emma? Victoria's voice pulled me back. You still there? This is real? I asked. This isn't some kind of joke? It's real. I did some digging. Jennifer Chen is the real deal. She's been with Azure for 8 years, has a reputation for finding and nurturing innovative brands. This is the kind of opportunity most restaurateurs wait their whole lives for. I leaned against a building, my mind racing. A national partnership, the resources to expand beyond New York, the ability to bring my employee-first model to a larger scale. What do you think? Victoria asked. I think Derek's lawsuit threat just became completely irrelevant, I said. I need to call Rebecca back. The meeting with Azure Group happened Thursday afternoon in a corner office overlooking Central Park. Jennifer Chen was exactly what I'd expected. Sharp, professional, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of successful deal-making. She'd brought 2 associates, and I'd brought Rebecca and Marcus. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, Jennifer said once we were all settled. I know your week has been eventful. That's one word for it, I said with a slight smile. If I'm being honest, the publicity is part of what accelerated our timeline, Jennifer continued. Your story resonated with a lot of people. The idea that you built this empire while maintaining anonymity, that you valued authenticity over appearances. That's rare in this industry. I wasn't trying to make a statement, I said carefully. I was trying to protect myself. And that's exactly why it works, Jennifer replied. You weren't performative about it. You just lived your values. That's the kind of leadership we want to partner with. Over the next 2 hours, we discussed details. Azure wanted to help me expand the Meridian concept to 5 more cities over the next 3 years. They'd provide capital, real estate connections, and operational support. I'd maintain creative control and continue my profit-sharing model with employees. It was more than I'd ever imagined possible. There's one more thing, Jennifer said as we were wrapping up. We'd want you to be the public face of the brand. No more hiding behind LLCs and holding companies. This would require you to step into the spotlight fully. I glanced at Rebecca, who gave me a subtle nod. We'd discussed this possibility on the walk over. A month ago, I would have said no, I admitted. But I'm tired of hiding. If being visible means I can help other women see that business success doesn't require choosing between authenticity and achievement, then I'm in. Jennifer smiled. Then I think we have a deal. The story hit the press the following Monday. Not the gossip blogs this time, but the business pages. Emma Sullivan partners with Azure Group for national expansion, read the Wall Street Journal headline. Forbes ran a profile titled The Accidental Celebrity CEO. Even my mother called, proud but slightly bemused by all the attention. And Derek? He signed the NDA on Tuesday, probably once he realized that fighting me would only keep him in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. The $50,000 donation went through on Wednesday, announced via a press release that thanked Derek Morrison for inspiring conversations about supporting women entrepreneurs. I saw his LinkedIn post later that day. He'd shared the announcement, adding some generic comment about being passionate about small business growth. The comments section was fascinating. a mix of people congratulating him and people who clearly knew the real story making pointed remarks about how generous he was being. I didn't comment. Didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and Derek's attempt to spin it just made him look more pathetic. 3 weeks later, on what would have been my wedding day, I was instead at the Meridian hosting a celebration for my staff. I'd closed the bar to the public and filled it with the 63 people who made my businesses run. There was champagne, the real stuff this time, not hidden in my purse, and a full spread of food from our best suppliers. "I want to thank you all," I said, standing by the bar with Marcus beside me. "This past month has been chaotic and strange, and sometimes overwhelming. But through all of it, you've shown up. You've done your jobs with excellence and supported me in ways I can't fully express." I paused, looking around at the faces I'd come to know so well. Elena, my head server who was going back to school to get her business degree. James in the kitchen, who'd just gotten promoted to head chef. Sarah behind the bar, who'd recently bought her first apartment thanks to our profit-sharing program. "The Azure partnership means changes," I continued. "Growth and expansion and new opportunities. But it also means more jobs, better benefits, and the chance to show other companies that you can be successful while treating people with dignity and respect. You've all been part of building something special. Now we get to build it even bigger." The applause was genuine, warm. These were people who knew my story, who'd kept my secret when it mattered, who'd watched me navigate an impossible situation with grace. Later, after most people had left and it was just me, Marcus, and Victoria sitting at the bar, Marcus raised his glass. "To Emma," he said, "who turned the worst day into the best opportunity." "To selective honesty," Victoria added with a grin, "and knowing when to drop the mask." "To second chances," I said, "and the courage to walk away from anything that makes you smaller." We drank, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw the Azure announcement. Congratulations, you deserve it. James. Derek's friend from that night. The one who'd apologized." I showed the message to Victoria and Marcus. "Interesting," Victoria said. "Think he's being genuine?" "Does it matter?" I replied. "Genuine or not, it's nice to know some people can recognize when they were wrong." I typed back, "Thank you. That means a lot." Short, polite, opening no doors but not slamming them either. "You're too forgiving," Marcus observed, echoing Victoria's words from weeks ago. "I'm not forgiving," I corrected. "I'm just not holding grudges. There's a difference. Derek showed me who he was, and I made my decision based on that information. His friend is showing me something different. Maybe he learned something. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it doesn't cost me anything to acknowledge his apology." "When did you get so wise?" Victoria teased. "Somewhere between the engagement and the breakup," I said. "Turns out almost marrying the wrong person teaches you a lot about what really matters." The truth was, I'd learned more in the past month than in the previous year combined. I'd learned that hiding myself didn't protect me, it just delayed the inevitable revelation. I'd learned that someone's true character shows up in how they treat you when they think you can't fight back. And I'd learned that the best revenge isn't elaborate or vindictive. It's simply being successful and happy without them. A few months later, I was in Chicago scouting locations for the Meridian's first expansion. Rebecca had flown out with me to handle the legal details, and we were standing in a converted warehouse that had perfect bones and terrible lighting. "What do you think?" the real estate agent asked hopefully. "I think we can work with it," I said, already visualizing the space transformed. But we need to talk about those windows. My phone rang. My mother. "How's Chicago?" she asked. "Promising. We're looking at a space in West Loop that could be perfect." "Good. Listen, I wanted to tell you something. Derek got engaged." I paused mid-step. "Already?" "Already. Some woman he met through work. They're apparently moving quite fast." I waited for the surge of emotion, jealousy, anger, regret. It didn't come. Instead, I just felt nothing. Maybe a little pity for whoever she was. "Good for him," I said, and I meant it. "I hope she knows what she's getting into." "You're really okay?" Mom asked, that maternal concern evident even through the phone. "I'm better than okay, Mom. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." After we hung up, Rebecca gave me a knowing look. "You heard. Derek's engaged. And nothing. That's his life now. This is mine." We finished the walkthrough and signed the lease that afternoon. The Chicago Meridian would open in 8 months, bringing jobs and opportunities to a new city, spreading the model I'd worked so hard to build. That evening, sitting in my hotel room overlooking Lake Michigan, I thought about everything that had changed since that Saturday night when Derek made his toast. He'd called me nothing without his money. He'd believed I needed him to have value, to have purpose, to have a future. He'd been so spectacularly wrong. I pulled out my laptop and opened a document I'd been working on, a memoir that my publisher was already excited about. Not a tell-all or a revenge fantasy, but an honest account of building businesses while being a woman in a male-dominated industry. About the choices we make to protect ourselves and the costs of hiding who we really are. I typed, Chapter 12, The Toast That Changed Everything. The words flowed easily now, no longer weighted with anger or hurt. Just facts, observations, lessons learned. Derek would be in this book. He was part of the story, after all. But he wouldn't be the villain. He'd just be a person who revealed my truth to me, who forced me to stop hiding and start living fully. In a weird way, I was grateful to him for that. 6 months after that, the Meridian Chicago opened to packed crowds and rave reviews. The model worked even better the second time around. We'd learned from our mistakes, refined our systems, empowered our staff. 2 more locations were already in the pipeline. And me? I was on the cover of Incature magazine, named one of their 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. The article talked about my employee profit-sharing model, my rapid expansion, my commitment to sustainable business practices. There was a sidebar about the engagement that went viral, but it was just context now, not the whole story. I framed that magazine cover and hung it in my office at the original Meridian. Not out of ego, but as a reminder. A reminder that the person Derek had called nothing had built something remarkable. That the woman he'd pitied had never needed his pity at all. The last time I saw Derek was completely by accident. I was having dinner with potential investors at an upscale restaurant in Midtown when I spotted him across the room with a woman I assumed was his new fiancé. Our eyes met for just a moment. He looked away first. I smiled and returned to my conversation about expanding into the West Coast market. Later, as I was leaving, the restaurant's owner stopped me. "Ms. Sullivan, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Thomas Reed. I just wanted to say I'm a huge admirer of your work. The way you've built the Meridian Group, your employee model, it's inspiring." "Thank you," I said, genuinely pleased. "That means a lot." "Actually, I've been considering implementing something similar here. Would you be open to consulting?" I handed him my card. "Absolutely. Have your people call my people." As I walked out into the New York night, I felt the satisfying weight of success. Not the hollow kind that came from proving someone wrong, but the real kind that came from knowing I'd built something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. The new hire started today. She's perfect for the role. Reminds me of someone else who started as a bartender. I smiled and typed back. Everyone deserves a chance to build something. That's what we're here for. And that, ultimately, was the truth Derek had never understood. Success wasn't about who had more money or who needed whom. It was about building something bigger than yourself, creating opportunities for others, and having the courage to be exactly who you were. I'd spent 8 months pretending to be less than I was, trying to find out if someone could love the real me. In the end, I'd learned a different lesson entirely. The only person who needed to fully see and value Emma Sullivan was Emma Sullivan herself. Everything else was just details. As I walked toward the subway, passing by people and lights and the endless energy of the city I loved, I thought about that toast one more time. Derek raising his glass, announcing to everyone that I was nothing without his money. He'd meant it as a compliment, in his own twisted way. He'd thought he was being generous, magnanimous, the hero of his own story. But he'd actually given me the greatest gift possible, the truth. And I'd taken that truth and built an empire with it. Not bad for someone who was nothing. Not bad at all. 2 years later, the Meridian Group now operates in 12 cities across the United States. Our employee profit-sharing program has been featured in Harvard Business Review and adopted by 6 other restaurant groups. Emma Sullivan was named one of Fortune's most powerful women in business and serves on the board of 3 nonprofits supporting women entrepreneurs. Derek Morrison married his second fiancé 6 months after meeting her. They divorced 14 months later. He no longer works at the investment firm. The original Meridian in New York remains Emma's favorite, and she can still be found working behind the bar on Saturday nights, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Because that mahogany bar top, those exposed brick walls, that carefully curated space was where she finally stopped pretending to be anything other than exactly who she was. And that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.